Back, if you've just joined us, we're busy having a conversation about the amendments to the Labour Relations Act, the bulk of which came into being in January. So we're in March now, and 3 months down the line, you should all have been working with these new laws and employing them in your workplaces as an employer, as an employee. And part of the journey that the Department of Labour has gone on is to make sure that people understand what they mean for both employers and employees. And so today we're unpacking those, and we're also going to be raising some questions, your questions, via Twitter at Morning Live SABC, and also some of the questions from the guests that are here about maybe some of the implications of the changes in legislation. So just before the break, we got a sense of the journey of why the changes were needed, simplification of some of the processes that one had to go through with the old legislation and why the changes were necessary, and also a little bit of what that might mean for the CCMA as well. So let's start to continue that conversation and hear what your thoughts are and the thoughts of the audience here as well. Okay, well, let's track now, because I'm going to now start wearing the hat of some of the people that I hear during the day. And the first thing is Labour says, look, Minister, you talked about the casualisation, for example, and I wonder, people don't just get up in the morning and say, I'm going to keep my guy casual. And it might be that they keep them casual because the Labour legislation was so onerous or worked so hard against the employer that it's better to keep him non-permanent because it'll be hard to get rid of him, or etc., etc., etc. What do you say to the argument that the employers were forced to behave the way that they did?
I won't agree with that they were forced. Because when you start a business, you must have a projection on how your business is going to grow, and also how many people are you going to employ, and how are you going to employ those people. For example, when you look at the casualization in particular, where the companies were asking the temporary employment agencies or private agencies to supply them with the workers, the challenge was that in terms of the company, you'll find that they're going to say, we want a person who's going to be doing this job for this particular amount. And what should happen is that the agreement with that employment agency, the company must pay the fees that will be charged by that employment agency. But what was happening was vice versa, because most of the private agencies were even tapping from the salaries of the workers, which is unfair to the workers. So that is why we are saying we need to continue with the issue of equality in terms of the law in this country. That is why we are saying if you are the cashier, whether you are permanent or temporal, you must be paid equally. You can't have a situation where a cashier that is permanent can be paid that particular amount, and because you are temporal, therefore, it seems as if you are not doing the exact or the same job in that particular area. So that is what we're dealing with here. And also, what should happen is that the employment agency can't tap from the salary of that worker, because that was the arrangement between the two. And that is why we are saying, for example, in the retail sector, based on my experience as well, was that most of the workers were supplied by the private agencies. And then the company will pay direct the employment agency instead of paying for that particular worker. And at the same time, when it comes to the social protection of those workers, they didn't have that protection. So we're saying every worker should be protected in terms of the law based on the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And as we all say, we have the best Constitution and we respect the Constitution. That is why we have to comply with the labor laws, because they emanate from the very same Constitution.
All right, I'm going to go to the floor just now, but an interesting thing, though, for me is what happened post-94? Because we only saw this increase in labour brokers post-1994. What changed in the labour environment to see this spike in these labour brokers? Or Ms. Nerine?
Okay, I think what has happened is that most of the jobs were outsourced. Yeah. It's either to the private companies and everything. And that is where this issue of exploitations, therefore, came in, based on that outsourcing and subcontracting. But
why were they outsourced, DG?
I think what companies did, they, in order to reduce cost, labor cost, for instance, they then decided that let's identify operations that are really not core functions and outsource them. Now, in outsourcing them in a way, they then relieved themselves of the obligation to comply with, for instance, the unemployment insurance fund contributions, the compensation fund contributions, and all other core rights that workers have in terms of the basic conditions of Employment Act. Now, the way in which the law was written before, you would note that the client and the labor broker had a jointly and several responsibility in as far as ensuring that the rights of these workers are protected. However, the problem that we tended to have was that nobody wanted to take this responsibility. Even the client didn't want to take the responsibility because the client felt that these were not my workers. All what I asked for was for a service, and I got the service. The second point is, therefore, what it means, Peter, is that these are not, in a way, completely new jobs. These are jobs that were there, but outsourced. So somebody else is doing this, and that somebody else, therefore, has a legal responsibility to comply with the existing labor legislations and make sure that the workers that are there are protected. So what we've done now with the new amendments is that we've made it clear, we've clarified the importance of the role of the client, because the client determines the employment conditions and also is responsible for what is happening at a workplace.
Okay. Yes. All right, so we can unpack that a little bit further, because some people might say we should be free to do a business the way we want to do it, but we'll explore that. I want to start getting to our tables, though. I want to start, in fact, the first one I've got, I was going to come to you anyway. I'm glad that you want to ask a question. Table number 10, from Solidarity, Gideon Duplessis. Ask your question, and I might ask you one in return.
Thank you, Peter. Obviously, Solidarity will not get an opportunity go by to deal with affirmative action issues. Just a question then, first of all, to DG and the Minister. It's regarding affirmative action and Section 42 that was amended, making provision for national and regional demographics, but it also gives the Minister power to enforce it. Now, our concern is that that specific clause can cripple the economy. Especially if you apply it to Eskom, that's a company in crisis. The whole economy is built around it. The Deputy President made it clear in Parliament that any form of restructuring or whatever is taking place will come to an end, because that company must function to its full extent. Now we're sitting with a situation where we are now dealing with the Employment Equity Act and the pressure from the Act and the new plan that needs to be submitted, making provision for a reduction in white engineers. whilst the company is in crisis. But we're also sitting with the ironic situation where if you apply the strict demographics, at the bottom, a very important role playing by support services are totally black. So you need to get rid of a few thousand black employees who are equally important as the white engineers. And there is so much uncertainty amongst the Eskom employees as a result of this issue. And the question then is, you cannot separate logic, reality, and leadership from legislation. And the decision that needs to be taken is transformers working or transformation working. But all the levels below the deputy president, it seems the decision is let transformation work and not the transformers work. And in the end, that will be to the detriment of poor people who will be affected if the economy is affected. So if the Minister and the DG can please address us on that issue.
Okay.
Want to take it, please? Oh, okay. Gideon, thank you very much for the question. Firstly, you will remember that just before the introduction of the new employment equity legislation, the cry has always been that the employment equity only takes into account the national demographics. Now, in trying to make sure that we deal with the reality at a regional and provincial levels, we have now affected the regional demographics. So in making a decision, one has also got to be informed by what is happening at both national and regional. I think I wanted to just clarify that. The second thing is, in employment equity is about transformation, is about appreciating diversity in the workplace. And obviously, when you want to diversify your workplace, there are basic things that you'll have to be, that will inform you. One, the skills that are available, the experience of the people that you have, and the objectives that you have in terms of moving from the state that you're at now to your desired state. How are you going to do that? Now, I'll tell you what happens is, as a Department of Labor, we receive employment equity plans from companies. Now, when we receive the employment equity plans, we make the assumption that a number of things have happened. One.
All right. Unfortunately, we're under commercial pressure to just go for a quick commercial break, and then as soon as we come back, can you finish those points? Thank you very much indeed. Right. We have to pay my salary. We'll see you right after this.